Welcome, everyone. Today, we're looking at an ancient text that, surprisingly enough, reads just like a modern software manual. It's called the Chāliya Sutta. It's this absolutely fascinating discourse from the Buddhist canon, but instead of treating it like some dusty old philosophy, we're going to look at it as a flawless, step-by-step algorithm designed for upgrading the human mind. Seriously, it outlines a systematic process to literally debug the mind of its most stubborn existential glitches. Okay, let's dive into this explainer and see exactly how this incredible text decodes the process of ultimate human awakening.
So here's the roadmap for our explainer. We'll start off with part 1, the glitch. Then we'll move into the firewall, ramp up the processing power, download the ultimate data, and finally arrive at system resolution.
All right, section 1. The glitch, the soul and body enigma.
Our story kicks off in the ancient city of Kosambi. We've got these two wandering ascetics, Mandya and Chāliya, and they bring this massive philosophical bug to the Buddha. They ask, is the soul the same as the body, or are they different? Now, you hear that, and it seems like a pretty straightforward question, right? But it's actually a massive binary trap. Because look, if you say they're the same, you're implying that when the physical body dies, the soul is just completely annihilated. But if you say they're different, well, then you're implying there's this eternal soul that's completely disconnected from physical reality. So the crucial takeaway here is that this binary question just traps the human mind in an endless, unresolvable loop.
Now, a lesser teacher probably would have taken the bait, right? They'd just start arguing for one side or the other. But the Buddha, he immediately recognizes that the question itself is the glitch. The mind asking the question literally doesn't have the operating capacity to process the answer. So instead of getting dragged into a debate, the Buddha offers them a diagnostic tool and a complete system upgrade. He lays out a highly precise path of mental evolution so they can just transcend the question entirely.
Which brings us to section 2, the firewall, firm foundation through morality. Obviously, before you can upgrade any system, you have to secure it against external threats. This security protocol in the text is called Sīla, or morality, and it's absolutely the foundation of the Buddha's entire algorithm. He breaks this behavioral firewall down into 3 distinct levels. First, you've got minor morality, which is your basic ethical conduct. No killing, no stealing, no lying. Then comes middle morality, which gets a bit stricter. That means no playing games, no luxurious high beds, no running worldly errands. And finally, major morality, which completely forbids any wrong livelihood. Now remember, this isn't just about being a good person. What you're essentially doing here is putting your consciousness on do not disturb mode. You are completely isolating your mind from external viruses, daily drama, and distractions. You're literally shutting down all those background applications so the mind can finally focus.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is just how hyper-specific the rules for major morality actually get. The Buddha explicitly forbids monks from acting as fortune tellers or predicting celestial events like eclipses and meteor showers. They can't interpret animal sounds, act as messengers, or perform magical healing. You might be wondering why? Well, because these activities keep the mind hooked on the external world. They're pure data noise. By prohibiting them, the firewall becomes completely impenetrable. The practitioner is shielded entirely from the anxieties of the future and the superstitions of society. So, after detailing this perfect, blameless conduct, the Buddha asks the two ascetics a question. And this actually establishes a recurring refrain we'll see a lot. He asks, when a monk sees and knows this, should he say the soul and the body are the same or different? And the ascetics have to admit that someone experiencing this level of profound purity simply wouldn't care about that debate anymore. So even at this basic level of discipline, you can see the original glitch is already starting to lose its grip. All right, moving into section 3, processing power, elevating mind through jhana. Okay, so once that firewall of morality is fully active, the protected mind can actually start concentrating its energy. It stops leaking attention all over the world and turns inward through intense meditation. Let's look at how this builds through 4 stages of profound concentration, known as the jhanas. This is literally a step-by-step procedure of letting go. In the first jhana, the mind experiences this intense joy simply from withdrawing from worldly desires. Then in the second, active thinking just stops entirely, and it's replaced by a deep inner peace and focus. By the third jhana, even that physical thrill of joy fades out into a crystal clear, mindful equanimity. And finally, the fourth jhana is a state of pure, flawless equanimity, totally beyond pleasure and pain. At this point, the mind is operating at maximum efficiency. It is perfectly still and infinitely sharp. And right here, the text brings back that crucial refrain.
In this state of flawless, transcendent stillness, does the intellectual debate about the soul and body being the same or different even matter? Once again, the ascetics agree. The binary question is becoming increasingly irrelevant. The operating system has essentially evolved way past the need for that kind of rudimentary logic.
Let's head into Section 4, Ultimate Data, Wisdom and the 8 Knowledges.
So with the mind now functioning as this perfectly optimized, hyper-concentrated instrument, it's finally ready to perceive reality as it actually is. This brings us to what we can call the machine learning phase of our algorithm, where the practitioner unlocks some truly profound capabilities known as the 8 knowledges. The very first insight is this radical shift in perspective. The fully concentrated mind looks at the physical body and clearly sees it for what it is, just a temporary combination of 4 elements, sustained by food and entirely destined to break down. But remarkably, from this deeply concentrated state, the practitioner can actually generate a secondary, perfect, flawless mind-made body, complete in all its parts. So they've effectively mapped the separation of consciousness and physical form through direct experience, not theory. It's truly amazing.
And this brilliantly illustrates what happens next. The text describes this incredible explosion of supernatural abilities unlocked by the hyper-focused mind. We're talking about multiplying physical forms, passing effortlessly right through solid mountains, possessing a divine ear that can hear sounds across the universe, accurately reading the mental states of others, and even accessing the vast data archives of one's own past lives. Now, I know these sound fantastical, but within the logic of the Sutta, they are simply the natural outputs of a mind that has completely mastered the software of reality. But honestly, perhaps the absolute most profound of these data downloads is the divine eye. The practitioner gains the ability to observe the constant arising and passing away of all living beings. They see exactly how a being's ethical actions, their karma, logically dictate their future destinations. It is the ultimate realization of cause and effect. It shows that the universe isn't random at all. It's a vast, perfectly logical algorithm.
And after each and every one of these profound realizations, the Buddha repeats that refrain. The rhythmic, compounding effect is undeniable. Think about it. With a mind that can walk through walls, recall thousands of past lives, and see the karmic code of the entire cosmos, the ascetic's initial glitch about the soul and body is virtually erased. It's just a tiny, completely irrelevant error in the face of absolute cosmic clarity.
And that brings us to Section 5, System Resolution, Liberation Beyond All Debates.
We have reached the ultimate climax of mental evolution as laid out in the Chāliya Sutta. The 8th and final knowledge is called asava-kaya, and this translates to the ultimate destruction of all mental defilements, biases, and deeply rooted taints. This is it, the final wipe of all bugs from the system's core. The mind is permanently scrubbed clean of ignorance, the desire for existence, and all sensory attachment.
So, how is this final wipe actually achieved? It happens through the ultimate data output, the direct experiential realization of the Four Noble Truths. The mind clearly sees the reality of suffering. It sees the origin of that suffering, the cessation of suffering, and the precise path that leads to that cessation. Once this code is fully compiled and understood, the system achieves total unshakable liberation. The task is done. There is literally nothing further to achieve.
And here, the Buddha delivers the final resolution. When someone has upgraded their mind to this level of ultimate liberation, asking if the soul and body are the same or different is entirely meaningless. The two ascetics, Mandya and Chāliya, rejoice. They finally get it. The Buddha didn't just hand them an answer. He gave them the complete algorithm to transcend the question entirely, proving once and for all that some intellectual debates can only be solved by elevating the very consciousness that asks them.
Which leaves us with a really fascinating thought to end our explainer today. We spend so much of our time arguing over these binary questions in our lives, in our politics and in our relationships. But if you upgraded your mind, installed that firewall of morality, and cultivated that intense processing power of clarity, what modern burning debates would simply cease to matter to you? Think about it. Thanks so much for joining me, and I'll catch you on the next one.